I'm going to go get a rights form.
Well, you can read them because I don't know where my baby is.
Lower your voice to me because you have no right to raise your voice to me. You lied to me twice in your son's abduction case. Don't raise your voice to me.
I have no reason to want to harm my baby or anything like that. And if I knew where he was, I would definitely have said something. Yeah, I'm not calling and telling y'all what I was doing, Chris. Stop. I didn't have nothing to do with that.
Do you got a reason to lie to me?
No, I do not.
Why have you done it twice?
I don't even know.
So 25-year-old Lorna Laura Moore Barton, that's his mother. She's a addict. She's a and she was working at Wacko's Gentleman's Club on Emerson Street in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, she had 3 children, the oldest of which she actually had when she was a teenager. So she also had a 5-year-old daughter, and her youngest was 21-month-old Lonzy Barton. Now, the 2 of her younger children were actually with her estranged husband, a guy called Christopher Barton. What I would say is there is some uncertainty also as to whether Christopher is actually the biological father of Lonzy. Now, Lorna Barton is dating William Reuben Ebron Jr. He is known as a dealer. Now, Ebron, unsurprisingly, is known to law enforcement. He'd actually recently had an injunction placed for protection against him by his ex-girlfriend and her sister. Now, on the 24th of July 2015, Lorna's son, who is this beautiful blonde-haired little boy, 21-month-old Lonzy Barton, he's suddenly reported missing. I mean, this is every parent's nightmare, isn't it? At 2:20 a.m. on the 24th of July, 2015, 32-year-old William Reuben Ebron Jr. rings 911.
Yeah, someone reported a car stolen. It's a 95 Honda Civic.
You know who stole it?
No, I don't. It's a 95 Honda Civic, and somebody just took off.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me just check and make sure it wasn't towed or anything, all right?
It couldn't have been towed, not that quick. And it's my kid is in the back, still in the back of the car. My kid is in the back of the car.
Okay. What color is it?
It's a bright orange. You can't miss it. 95 Honda Civic.
Which way did it go?
I just seen it. I tried to run towards the street, but it looked like it went left, but I couldn't tell, man. By the time I got from the back of the neighborhood, I think had already.
Okay. Okay. Which way was the last scene going?
It looked like it was going left towards University.
Okay. Is your kid?
What's that?
Your kid is in the back seat, right?
Yes, in the back seat.
Can you describe the suspects?
I did not see. I went inside real quick, put on a movie, and by the time I came out, the car was gone.
So you parked your car out front, left your kid in the car real fast, went inside, came back out, your car's...
And he basically starts that conversation with 911 talking about the fact that his car's been stolen. That car was a 1995 orange Honda Civic, and he said he didn't know who'd actually stolen it. He also then says that Lonzy Barton is in the back of the car. So he's saying that this 21-month-old child was left in the back of the car. Now, that in itself bothers me. He then tells them that he'd left Lonzy alone in the car for a few minutes. He apparently wanted to go and retrieve something from the house inside. And then he said he did try to run towards the direction the car had gone, but he was basically unable to chase the car down. Now, during Ebron's 911 call, one of the things that stood out was that he was firstly really calm. Now, the last thing you are going to be, no matter even if you're happy, is calm when a child in your care has basically disappeared in a car that you left them unattended in. Now, at approximately 2:37 a.m., police do locate Ebron's car. It's just a short distance away, in fact, from the apartment building in the 8100 block of Cespedes Avenue. Lonzy, however, nowhere to be seen. Now, of course, the police then have to interview both Lorna and Ebron. When he gets brought in, when Ebron's questioned, he basically tells the police that he put Lonzy and also his 5-year-old sister inside the car because they were going to go and pick Lorna up from work. He said after he'd got them into the car, he then realised that he had forgotten something. He needed to go back into the apartment to get it. And he said that he needed to take the 5-year-old little girl with him because she's apparently scared of sitting in the dark car. You want to create another child with that kind of fear? Leave them in a car, unattended, by themselves in the dark. So that doesn't make sense, and that's neglectful again. Now, after he's questioned about what he went back into the apartment for, he admits that he went back in for... So the reason he's admitting that is he wants to essentially look honest. Now, at 6:22 a.m., the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they end up issuing an Amber Alert for the missing boy with the hope that this will alert somebody if they see him. Now, Lorna says when she's interviewed that as far as she was concerned, Lonzy was alive and well when she went to work as an adult dancer on the night of the 23rd of July. That was when she'd last apparently seen him alive. Ebron, he's sticking to his original story too about the car theft, and he was somebody who provided his whereabouts and also his activities from when Lorna was dropped off to evidence what he was doing, to kind of give them a timeline of where he'd been and what he'd been doing during the period of dropping his girlfriend off and then, of course, Lonzy going missing. But as Ebron is telling this story and giving this timeline, it's automatically coming into conflict with what witnesses had seen, because they're telling the police that the very car that's apparently been stolen, that had been seen in the same location the day before that theft had actually taken place. So it's numerous people, including two very specific witnesses who come forward and say, look, I can absolutely testify that car was there. There's no way it was stolen after, because it's in the same space that it was 24 hours before the theft was even reported. Now, Ebron says they're just making it up. It isn't true. It wasn't possible. So he's sticking to that story. Now, the police are obviously scouring the local area for security footage, and they managed to come across some residential security footage. Now, they get this security footage, and guess what it shows? You won't be surprised. It shows Ebron staging the car theft. So this surveillance footage is really incriminating. So it basically shows Ebron's car driving past the camera, and then later shows who they believe was Ebron running back in the other direction. So not exactly chasing the car, as he suggested to the police in the initial inquiries. Quite the contrary. He's just running back in the direction of his apartment, and this is 9 minutes after the car has gone past. So this is really conflicting with what he said. Now, the police question why he wasn't caught on camera chasing the vehicle, and also why there was this 9-minute delay. And that's, shall we say, pretty difficult for Ebron to explain. So at this point, he is placed under arrest. Now, at 11:20 p.m. on the 24th of July, William Reuben Ebron Jr. is charged with 2 counts of child neglect, and he is at that point admitted into the Duval County Jail, and rightly so. And I'm going to say that from the get-go, I have some real concerns about the way that Lorna acts in this case. So it's a few days later, after Ebron's been arrested, that Lorna, Laura Moore Barton, is brought in to be interviewed. And she doesn't feel, to me, a mother in distress. Now, when Lorna is asked, okay, so what do you believe happened to your child? And we see this in interrogations quite a lot, in interviews quite a lot. The police officers will pose this idea of what do you think could have happened? Because often when you're a perpetrator, you can't help yourself but bring in some kind of weaving of reality. So they're doing that to offer her an opportunity to essentially substantiate the suspicions they may have about her at this moment in time. So they ask her, what do you think happened to your child? And she basically puts the blame on Ebron and says, look, I don't think she was watching him properly. I think something happened to him. Now, that's quite an abstract thing to say. To actually say, oh, I don't know what was happening, but I think that probably Ebron's responsible, and it's likely that he just wasn't watching him appropriately. She also then adds, and again, this is really strange as far as I'm concerned, and this is why interrogators use this kind of method. She says, I think that maybe Lonzy could have drowned in the bathtub, or may have got a hold of something out of Ebron's drawer and maybe accidentally overdosed. And again, if she was genuinely suspicious that her boyfriend had caused the death of her child, you would imagine absolute anger or distress, and it just isn't there. And then she even goes as far as saying that, this will have happened potentially. This might have happened. My son might have drowned in the bath or taken an accidental overdose, maybe both of those things. And then Ebron has realised my child's dead and thought to himself, oh no, I need to cover this up because I'm going to get into trouble. And so she said that at this point, Ebron quickly comes up with a story to make it look like it's something else. Now, a few days after Lorna's original interview, she's brought in for another interview, and the reason for this is the investigators discover that before he went missing, Lonzy apparently had a bruise on his head behind the ear. Now, she said, she claimed at least, that he didn't have bruises or anything other than a mark on his lip. She's then asked whether there was anything behind his ear, and then she says there's a small bruise behind his ear, but she was really unsure as to where the bruise had come from. It's quite an unusual injury for a child to get, by the way. Also, Lonzy, they said, was showing symptoms of head trauma because he was being fussy, as she claimed, and he was also throwing up. Now, she said at this point, well, I was going to take him to the doctors, but you didn't. So why didn't you? Let's be clear. If your child is being fussy and throwing up and has an unusual bruise, we are going to be at A&E straight away. We'll be at the hospital's accident and emergency department immediately because you don't want to take a risk with your child's health. And the fact that she kind of is saying about this future doctor's appointment as opposed to dealing with it in the moment is, again, neglectful. She also, at this point, reinforces the fact that she has no idea what happened to her son. So it's a few weeks pass, and then they bring Lorna back in for another interview. Now, in this interview, it's very clear that the detectives want to antagonise Lorna about her relationship with Ebron because they actually show phone logs that he has been calling another woman from jail. Now, she maintains that even though they've given this information to her, she's going to stick to the story that she doesn't have any idea where her son is or what had happened to him. Now, understandably, in spite of the fact that she hasn't been arrested at this point, they do feel as investigators they have enough information to, at this point, arrest her for child neglect. She was also charged with giving false information in a missing person case and child neglect. So at this point, she hasn't been charged for anything more malevolent, but these are still very serious charges. We get to January 2016. At this point, Lorna Barton pleads guilty to charges of child neglect and lying to the police. And she's basically offered a plea deal. Of course she is. So essentially, she agrees that she's going to testify against her fun boyfriend, but it turns out that's not going to be necessary because Ebron comes forward and confesses to what actually happened. Ebron lets the police know exactly where they can find his remains. Now, on the 11th of January 2016, that's when they found Lonzy Barton in a pile of garbage. They found his body beneath tyres off a road near Florida 9B and Phillips Highway in the woods. Ebron then obviously had to inform the investigators of actually what happened. So he tells investigators that he and Lorna had placed Lonzy in the bathtub. Now, whilst this beautiful little 21-month-old boy is in the bath, he and Lonzy's mother, Lorna, they went and had... And unsurprisingly, very unsurprisingly in fact, when she goes and checks on Lonzy, guess what? He's drowned. Ebron also told investigators in the week that the incident occurred, Lonzy had actually come back to him from Baker County. That's where Lonzy's biological father lived. And he said that's where the injuries actually were incurred. He also tells the investigators that he actually photographed some of the injuries and told the investigators where they could find the images on his cell phone. Now, those images were found and they did show injuries, but they were dated 2 days before Lonzy was reported missing. Now, when it came down to the autopsy report of Lonzy Barton, it was grim. It was really grim. So it was said that Lonzy's skeletal remains were collected in 11 brown paper bags. Several of those bags contained wisps of his blonde hair. On the remains, there were old rib and skull fractures. So like I said, this child has gone through substantial periods of... He's 21 months old. So because of the decomposition outside, he'd been there for 6 months before he was found. It just became impossible to actually know what killed him. Now, William Reuben Ebron Jr. cut a deal with the prosecutors by leading them to Lonzy's body. Obviously, it gave him some kind of impetus to say, I will tell you this if you give me that. So in February 2016, he pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter. Now, the state attorney, Angela Corey, they said that because the medical examiner couldn't pinpoint a cause of death, the plea was the right thing to do. That deposition was the only way to bring him home. So essentially, it was more important to get Lonzie's body, and yes, to get a guilty verdict, but to chance a trial without a body, for example, to chance a first-degree murder suit when you don't necessarily have the evidence, that's more of a problematic reality than actually going for something that's going to get him years in jail. Now, in his sentencing, when he was at the hearing, he basically says that Lonzie dies in the bathtub whilst he and Lorna Barton are having sex. He said he panicked. He hid Lonzie's body in a trash pole off near Bayard, and this leads to him essentially getting to serve up to 20 years in prison for first-degree manslaughter, also with concurrent sentences of 5 years for child neglect, 1 year for lying to police, and 5 years for tampering with evidence. Now, Lonzie's mother, 26-year-old Laura Moore Barton, who, like I said, I've got lots of questions about, because the way that she acts in the interviews just doesn't make sense to me. She doesn't seem authentic. She doesn't seem sad. She doesn't seem angry, but she ends up getting sentenced 8 months after her son goes missing and 2 months after his remains are found. She also had to pay the price of her children being taken out of her custody by the authorities. She also was accused of allowing Ebron, who was a known dealer, a known violent individual, into her child's life. And although Lorna had cooperated, she'd absolutely withheld that information from the authorities. So they said, yes, she did cooperate, but she hadn't informed the authorities of these really important factors. Now, another thing that I found really strange is during this period of time, she's appearing in court basically suggesting that she's pregnant. But then it turns out that a cellmate of hers testifies that she's just making it up. That there was some kind of suggestion to her defence that maybe, you know, if she was pregnant, it would look better for her and give more sympathy and empathy towards her, and that the defence were kind of on board with that. And so she admits that this is just an absolute ruse. It's been made up. And that, again, makes you feel that this woman is very, very deceptive. So she was basically sentenced to 5 years for child neglect and another year for lying to police, but they're going to run concurrently as opposed to consecutively. Now, Ebron is being held in the DeSoto Correctional Institute in Southwest Florida. Lorna Barton is currently in the Gadsden Correctional Facility near Tallahassee. She's also received a 7-year sentence on a charge from Baker County.